Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michel Botman. Welcome to this presentation of OTF Connects titled Digital Skills for Democracy, Inquiry and Blended Learning with Zoe Flatman and Rachel Collishaw. And this is the second episode in a series of three. So we had three in French. The second one in French was yesterday. We have three in English. Today is the second one in English. And Zoe and Rachel are going to share with us a lot of really extremely valuable resources that they have prepared and that teachers can use for classroom teaching, but also online teaching. And these resources are really well designed. I like actually a lot of the graphic work. I personally like that a lot. And also the resources are free. So we will share with you all the links so that you can access all these resources. Before starting, OTF would like us to share with you a quick land acknowledgement. Quick seg, yeah. We acknowledge that we are gathered in the territories of various indigenous people, and we further recognize their stewardships of these lands in which we live, learn, work, and play. And we are definitely thrilled and extremely happy to have each and every one of you with us today. We are 14 in the class for the moment, probably going to be around between 15 and 20 when everybody is joined. We're definitely thrilled to have Zoe Flatman and Rachel Collishaw with us. Zoe is an award-winning teacher in the Ontario District School Board. She's currently on secondment with Election Canada as the Civic Education Coordinator for the Greater Toronto Area. Zoe has a passion for global citizenship, sustainability, and civic engagement. And Rachel is with us again today, as she was yesterday. And Rachel is a secondary school teacher and instructional coach in the Ottawa area. She is the recipient of the 2013 Governor General History Award for Excellence in Teaching. She's also the author of several history and citizenship learning resources. She's currently on secondment as pedagogical advisor for Election Canada. And we had the pleasure of having Rachel with us yesterday, and Zoe and Rachel have worked with OTF on a number of occasions, and we are thrilled to have them with us today. So Zoe, I will invite you now. You can share your screen and you can start your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. We're really excited to be here to share this with you. I will say that, oops. It's not
Sorry,
working.
I stopped my share, so you should be able to share.
There we are.
No worries, no worries.
No, it's not letting me share.
Oh, I stopped my share, so if you click share screen, doesn't give you an option?
It's not lighting up as shareable.
I can step in, Zoe.
All righty.
All right,
It was working.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so sorry about that, but yes, we're really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to share this resource with you. We're not supposed to have favorites, I guess, like our children, but this is my favorite resource out of all the ones that we have to offer. So we're going to take you through the resource, show you how it was designed to be used in a classroom in a collaborative way, but also demonstrate the online adaptations that we've developed to support teachers in this time of blended and virtual learning as well. So what we would like to do is start off with a quick little poll, and we're going to send you to a Google form to just kind of give us a little bit of information about your teaching context and so on. So if you could post that link.
It's already in the chat. Michelle's all over it.
Excellent. Thank you.
And for those of you who have difficulties accessing that link, it should be fine. But if you have problems, you can always enter the information in the chat box. Don't hesitate to use the chat box if needed.
Oof, look at all those responses coming in.
Quite a few people are teaching in person only. That's a bit surprising to me. Almost half.
Kingston's had very low incidence of COVID. There's quite a lot of nice pockets where the in-person has been happening, which is great because our resources are great for in-person too.
They really are. But this one actually adapts very, very well to online learning as well and blended learning. And I'm seeing that there's not a ton of familiarity with our resources, so that's terrific as well, because I think you're going to be really excited with what you see today. So just another.
So in looking at, again, looking for those blended learning tips and support teaching elections and democracy. Well, you have all come to the right place.
You have. Okay. So that's fantastic. Thank you. So all of our resources are inquiry-based, cross-curricular, collaborative, nonpartisan, bilingual, accessible, and most importantly, free. So we will walk you through this resource today, and you can see all of these sorts of things, the cross-curricular, collaborative nature of it as we move along. So you can see here the structure of our resources. They all have a big idea, inquiry, question, 3-part lesson structure, and they come with hands-on material. So what you're seeing here in the photo is the in-class, collaborative nature of this particular one. And as Michelle pointed out, you can order physical kits shipped to your school, or you can download the resources from our website. We'll give you the link at the end. They all include really high quality, nonpartisan content. They have videos, maps, case studies, data, infographics, etc. So they're really, really great quality. So it's not super visible here, but you can see this is a photo of one of our blended learning guides that we developed in the spring when schools were closed and switching to virtual learning. And what we've done here is we've provided you with a menu of options. So on the left are the in-class suggestions, the way that we had designed the resources originally. And then on the right-hand column, we've given you online adaptations. And so we want teachers to be able to use this either way or blend it in a way that works for your students. So you, for example, you might want to do the Minds On in person with your students in class, have them do the activity phase on their own at home, and then come back together and do the consolidation, or whatever is applicable to your classroom, whatever works for your students in your environment. So when we were creating these adaptations, we were trying to embed in them solid blended learning pedagogy. And these are some of the key criteria for good quality blended learning, having that seamless connection between online and in class. You will have a virtual learning environment vis-a-vis your board. Will have its own platform that you can use. Increased student and student-teacher collaboration is important, and really important is increased student control over time, place, pace, and path of learning, and also restructured or repurposed instructional time is really important as well. And we'll show you examples of these as we're going through. I like the repurposed instructional time because what you can do is have students doing a lot of the critical thinking and reading and working through case studies at their own pace, in a virtual environment, and then you can use that class time really effectively to have good quality conversation because students have done the work and the thinking already. So we'll show you those as we go through. So today's resource is Digital Skills for Democracy. As I mentioned, each resource has an inquiry question that guides and structures the learning. And the inquiry question for this particular resource is, how can we find out if information about elections or political issues is something we can trust? So that's the focus, and that's what's going to guide the student learning as they go through. So here we are on the Minds. Yeah, the Minds On. The animation doesn't work somehow in Google. So Michelle has put a link in the chat. We're going to send you to the online version of the Minds On activity. So it's really just a quick true or false. We don't expect you to be looking anything up. We just want you to read the statement and decide whether you think it's true or false.
Yeah, so it should look like this for you. And then I'll just keep this up for the moment until we start getting some responses.
And let us know if you're having any difficulty.
Or if you have any questions at all in the chat, we're happy to field those.
Yep.
I see we're up to 23. It's great.
Excellent.
Yes, great number. Really great number.
I have to go back so I can check the responses.
Mm-hmm.
They do have to go through all the pages on this one. So
Yes, they do.
Practicing the patience.
We have our first response.
One.
Yay.
Love it. Shall I flip over, Zoe? You ready?
Just not
just
quite
give them
yet.
a couple more minutes.
There are only 3, so we don't
we
want
to let them
to
go. Yep. I'll wait till there's 50%.
Yeah. Or I guess if you want to just show the top, which shows the averages and not the actual responses,
the score.
We could do that. Lots of folks are getting the last question correct. I don't know why.
So I see Dell, you've got a message that you can't access it because you're using Microsoft Edge. I don't know if you can open Chrome on your computer. If not, we can sort that out after, and you can just kind of follow along with the rest of us. So I have found that these work in most browsers, so it could be just some firewalls that you have on your device.
Yeah, we use Microsoft Edge at Elections Canada as well, and I'm able to open them on that. So I'm not sure, it might be a particular firewall you're experiencing. Okay, so we'll wait another minute or two just for the last responses to come up. We're a good 50% of the way through. So far, the average and the median are pretty close to what we normally find. So that's pretty good.
All right, shall I scroll down, Zoe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so you can continue on doing this. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this because the Minds On is really there to just kind of get students to connect their own experience to the ideas that we're going to be exploring. It's not meant to be a long sort of onerous kind of thing.
Do you want to talk about this question a little bit?
Yeah, I really like this question statement too about the hippo milk, because I think it really demonstrates something that's kind of important as we're going through this lesson. It's most people get it right. So 71% of you got it correct, but maybe not for the reason that you thought, right? So it's possible to get something correct, but not for the reason that you thought. Most people probably, and certainly most students, would assume that hippo milk is white, like cow's milk or goat's milk or whatever other animal milk that we're used to seeing, but it's actually pink. So it's true that it's false that it's not blue, but it's pink, not white. So sometimes you can get the right answer for the wrong reason. And the other one, the kangaroo one, so most people are doing well on these middle ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing about the kangaroo question that I really, really like as well is that in this case, it's not 100% true. So there's a little bit of gray area there. It's not a yes or no. As we said in the answer, gray and red kangaroos, which are the largest species, tend to be left-handed, but there are other species where that may not be the case. So it's mostly true, right? And again, that's a good nuance if you're thinking about the kind of information that you're likely seeing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Should we get back?
Yep, we should go back. So this is a kind of a fun little activity. And, at this point, I would probably have a conversation with students about, well, what sort of criteria did you use to decide whether you thought it was true or false? And is that criteria something that you would want to use to judge an important issue around an election or a political issue that you're seeing? So that can be a really good sort of bridge conversation into the activity that we're going to be doing today. And in our activity, some of you might have heard the term fake news, and students certainly will know that term fake news, but we have not used those terms intentionally because it isn't really clear and it doesn't give us a good handle on what we're talking about. So we, in this activity, introduce students to the two types of false information that they're likely to find online. One is misinformation, where somebody shares something that they think is true, but it isn't. And so when I talk to students, I like to think of it as a mistake, right? So somebody shared something as a mistake. There wasn't an ulterior motive necessarily, but it isn't true. So an example that I've seen is, and you may have seen, is on Twitter, the pictures of the shark swimming down the highway after a hurricane, right? Well, that's not true. It's an edited photo, but people have shared it multiple times because they think that, oh my goodness, this really happened. So that would be a case of misinformation. Disinformation is sharing false or misleading information on purpose. And so this is where there may be an alternative motive, right? Or an ulterior motive, excuse me. So, I like to think of it as an attempt to disturb or disrupt, right? So that's a really kind of a little way of remembering the difference between the two. And as students go through this activity, we're going to ask them to reflect back and make decisions about what they think is mis and disinformation. Okay. And so we give students specific strategies that they can use as they go through the lesson to figure out how, or to figure out a way to see what's trustworthy and what's not online. And so we've come up with these 5 strategies in consultation with Media Smarts, who's done a lot of background research on this. And these are really quick, they're easy, and students can figure it out pretty quickly, whether something is trustworthy or not. So we're going to go through a couple of rounds using these different strategies.
Okay.
Yep. So each kit comes with 10 scenarios in 2 different rounds. So there's 5 round 1 cards, sets of cards, and 5 for round 2. Round 1 are really fictitious scenarios, just to give students the opportunity to practice the process and to see how the strategies work. Some of them are loosely based on, events, but there's not a lot of detail or anything. They're just meant to be really quick and go through the process. The round 2 scenarios are actual digital content. So some of them are tweets or Reddit posts or that kind of thing. And we give students the strategy again, and then what would result from that strategy? What would you find if you applied that strategy? And in each case, we're asking students now to go back to that original scenario and decide how trustworthy they think it is.
Okay.
Yep. So in an in-class situation, we would have students working on an organizer to chart their thinking. Together as a group, they read through the scenario cards, they read through the strategy cards, and they come to a consensus as a group about the scenario's trustworthiness. And you can see here how the thinking changes. So they rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, and then give some reasons as to why they ranked it that way. And you can chart their thinking as they go through each of these strategies in the case study. So they encounter new information. How does that change their thinking about the original scenario?
Mm-hmm.
So these are the 5 round 2 case studies in English. So we have adapted these to Google Forms. And so students can still go through the same process using a Google form. So the key to this activity that you have to remind students about is that they're always going back to that original scenario as they're moving through the activity. So we've done the work in sourcing the real world examples of mis and disinformation that are tied to specific strategies. So we're going to send you to one of these case studies, and the link should be in the chat, and give you an opportunity to work through, and you'll see how that form works.
Yeah,
but
so
remember that, sorry,
you'll see the scenario here, the image to support, you give your ranking, and then at the bottom of the next page, you're going to see that original scenario text will repeat, so you can keep referring to it.
Exactly. So that's what as you're going through this, you're not judging the strategy or the results of the strategy. You're using that as a clue to now go back to that original scenario, and has your thinking changed now with this additional information? And this is a great way to give students that control over pace and place of learning.
Zoe?
We're just starting to get a couple of responses coming in.
And I just want to mention that I'm recording the session, obviously, but I will cut that blank.
Silence out, yes.
when we post it. But good that we're getting some responses. Excellent.
Yeah. I don't like to talk too much while they're working on the form, because that talking and trying to read and do is difficult.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to cut that blank for the recording, obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yes, by all means, you're welcome to make a comment. Yep.
Sorry, I have gauze in my mouth. I
Oh.
should probably text this, but I just to get it out clearly. Each time I read each page, when it said how valid do you think the story is, I thought it was referring just to that page. I just want to say that. I think some students, if they were to read that, they might think that as well. And so I based my true or false based on what I was reading, not the overall scenario. I don't know if that's a silly thing, but I just
No, we have had this feedback before, Lindsay, and I think it is in sort of that transition from the in-person to online, although we did have this confusion with students. So when you're in a classroom with students and they have the cards in front of them, it's easy enough to kind of go back to the cards. And so we did put that original scenario or the original story on that page, just to help with this issue. But yeah, I think as the teacher, for it to work, like you kind of have to verbally reinforce that. Probably as they're
in class, I could totally see that being.
Yeah.
I think online, you just have to keep repeating that what you're looking for is the original. Anyways, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm just.
No, you're absolutely right. And when I do this with class,
I tend to have a problem with continuity sometimes across.
Yeah, it's not just you. Yeah,
don't worry. And when I do it with the classes, it is less of an issue in person, because each one is on a separate card, and they, for some reason, they have that other card in front of them, and it's less of an issue, but it still occurs, but you can catch it fairly early. And sometimes in the virtual world, as one or two responses start to come in, they're anonymous, so no one else in the class knows who it is. But if I see that pattern happening, if I see, for example, in this one that people were giving, like clue strategy number 3 of 5, that indicates to me that that's what they're doing. So I will remind them again as they're going through. Yeah. It doesn't happen as much in the round 1, which is why, we have that in there to kind of help them work through the process and understand it without any other prior kind of knowledge sort of associations.
And we, because you're all educators, we kind of just threw you in the deep end. Whereas if you're doing it with students, we recommend that you do that round 1 also for that reason. Make sure everybody's clear on the instructions.
Yep, exactly. And even if the students, they do tend to have less difficulty with that concept in round 1, but you still have to not take it for granted that round 2 will be equally smooth. There's something. I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah, as I say, we have a short amount of time here, and I just want to give everyone a chance to be able to see how it works and play with it. And
all right.
Good. Okay, so I think we can take a look here. So most of you were untrustworthy to begin with. Here's the interesting piece. Media Smarts has done a lot of research on this, and what they have found is that young people are very skeptical of everything they see. They think everything that they see online is fake or questionable, shall we say, whereas older generations tend to be a little bit more trusting. So that's an interesting thing, and we want to give students tools so that they can lose a bit of that skepticism, right? We want them to feel confident about where to get good information, and how to do that really quickly and easily, and give them a bit more confidence to do that. So that's a really important piece. Another thing is that, so we sent you all to the same case study. There are 5, as I mentioned. This is one of the few resources where we do not have a language learner version to help with that literacy piece in your classroom. So one of the suggestions we give is to only use one case study with all of the students, and then you can work with vocabulary and you can support your students better, rather than in a classroom they'd be working in groups on all the different strategies, or sorry, on different case studies within the groups. So
and one of the things that you can see in the results here is that the strategies are highlighted. So you can always go back, like that's the ultimate goal, is to really teach those 5 strategies to the students. And
and it's a bit ironic that we're doing this online digital literacy in an offline environment, but this way, we can help control, we don't want to send students out onto the internet on their own and to run amok, right? So we want to give them good information and structure it.
And we want to provide that opportunity for conversation and discussion. So even if you're using the online version, there's still that opportunity for discussion among the students.
Yep.
Shall we go back to the
Yes, let's go
slides?
Back. In the consolidation, in the classroom, what we would normally do is we would have, if the students are all doing different scenarios, they would present their scenario to the class and sort of give their final trustworthiness ranking, and the strategy that they found was most helpful. And we provide the teacher summary here of each of the case studies for each of the rounds, so that you can help support students and the rest of the class as they're presenting their results to their classmates. In an online environment, you could also do that in a discussion thread and that kind of thing.
And another support for language learners that you'll see here is our use of sentence stems rather than questions. So by starting the sentence, it provides language learners that entry.
Right. And so what we want to do once we've gone through and they've presented their scenarios is to have kind of a discussion. What do you think is the best way to respond to false or misleading information online? And how do you think mis and disinformation could affect our elections? And so for the case study that we looked at, I might also ask students, was this a case of misinformation or disinformation? And why do you think that, right? So we want to bring them back to those terms and think about what they mean in the context. So these are described in the teacher's guide. If you're doing a blended learning approach, you could have the discussion thread in your virtual environment as well. And all of our resources have an exit ticket, because we want to give students the chance to do that sort of metacognition and consolidate what they've learned throughout the lesson. So this is the exit card for this particular activity. And as Rachel said, we like to use sentence stems so that we can help students sort of support their literacy and their learning along the way. So in the regular version, we have a handout that you could give to students. And then in the online environment, you could have them do a Google Doc, for example.
Yep, or even I think we suggest Flipgrid, like a video response. So if students want to just send you a little video of them responding to these questions too. That's another great blended learning adaptation.
Sure. Okay, so I know this has been a bit of a whirlwind for you, but we'd like to hear from you. What are some of the things that you've learned in this short introduction to this resource that you think you could take with you? So if you could just fill out the Google form that Michelle has already posted.
And then we will answer questions right on the spot. But I think we're not going to share the responses, Zoe. Is that correct? You're gonna look at them and read them out.
Sure.
Because if you do want to connect with us, and we would be happy to have your contact information, feel free to leave that blank if you don't want us to contact you.
Yeah, but we won't share because people may decide to share their contacts, so we won't screen share it with you, but I will definitely address any questions that you have.
I guess I'm gonna pull up our website while we are waiting for this.
Yeah, so we can have a look at maybe the curriculum connections.
Yep, depending on sort of what the questions are, but yeah, we can start there. Or do you want to start with the ordering?
No, yeah, we'll start with the ordering. That's a better thing. Okay, so we've got a couple responses. So I never thought to use Google Forms for so much content. Yeah, they can be quite designed quite well. To me, they look very much like the in-person cards that we use. No questions. Someone likes the idea that they can access free materials.
Oh, we all like free materials.
Oh, don't we just? And all of the physical kits come with enough for one whole class. So this one you would get, as I said, really 10 sets of cards, 5 sets of round 1 cards and 5 sets of round 2. So you have enough to use in a classroom setting. And if you need extras, if your class is a little bit larger and you need extras, then you can download and print PDFs of extra content.
So shall I walk them through this web page, or are we waiting a little bit more?
Sure, go ahead. There are some really good things that we can address here.
Awesome. Okay, so number 1 is you can order the physical kit via this button. So I'm going to open that in a new tab so I don't get lost. And that will take you right to the Elections Canada main page, where you put in your, all of your information, and then you can just click on whichever resources you would like to order. So that's number 1. If you want to download everything, everything is available on right on this same page, and the teacher's guide is sort of explained right in this accordion menu as well. If you're looking for the blended learning version, you just need to click this link. I know it's not super obvious, and that will take you right into the Google folder where all the tools are. So you'll see all the different pieces that you're going to need.
Yeah.
Okay, Zoe, do you want to?
So yeah, we have some very challenging questions. Well, your Google Forms go from one page to the next so that students only see one at a time. How do you do that? That's an easy one to answer.
Oh yeah, I can answer that because I built these things. So the way that works is that you create these sections here. So from one page to the next is a new section, and then you can put a different thing, like what do you want them to do after this section. You can put in different connections or different conditions. Oops, I didn't want to add a question. But yeah, this is the button to add a section here. So that's how you do that. I'm going to delete this extra question.
The best tool for student feedback is, so I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, whether it's specific to this resource or in general. So an exit ticket is always a really good key. And some of those general questions about, well, similar to what we asked you in our exit ticket, what's a new idea or new learning or a takeaway that you have? How could you, what could you do to act upon that learning? What questions do you have? Having that section is a really good piece. What questions do you have now? And that can really help guide where you go next. I forgot to ask in the form how we can teach candidates. How can teacher candidates supply teachers order the kits? Same way anyone else can.
You can have them ordered to your home. It's available for any teachers to order, even if you're.
We don't discriminate. We want to get these in the hands of educators all over the place. This is a really key question that we may have some difficulty answering. How do you modify these for students with ASD?
Oh, that's a great question. So can I take a stab at this?
Sure, go ahead.
So I would say digital skills for democracy is one of our more complex resources. And I might start with something a little bit more cut and dried for students with ASD, and maybe go with a different resource that has a language learner version or that involves less conversation. I think part of using the blended learning adaptations is a great way to get started, so that you're not launching them into a conversation without understanding what's going on. It really depends on where on the spectrum your students are. But we do have a number of other resources, as well as trying to simplify this one, remove cards, or really only deal with like one scenario, maybe one that's a bit more straightforward, that kind of thing. That would be what I would suggest. I don't know, Zoe, if you have other suggestions. Not a question.
No, that would be my suggestion as well. This is a really difficult one, and as I said, because we don't have that language learner version, it is more difficult. Whereas many of our other ones do have that, or they have less reading that's necessary, more visual, or
and this suite of resources is designed for students, age 14 to 18, like in secondary school. And I would say this one sits very well in that grade 11, 12 area, whereas some of our others fit better in a more 9, 10, or even can be adopted quite easily into a 7, 8 or an elementary context. And we do have some elementary resources as well.
Yeah, I have found that this one, I have done it with grade 10 civics classes, and it works quite well. I have found that the grade 12 World Issues course is a really great place for this one. And
the
they
grade 11
really,
media studies is also fantastic.
Studies, grade 12 politics, or 11 politics. There's a lot of real fulsome discussion and conversation.
Curriculum connections.
Absolutely. So we also on our website have a curriculum connections page. So you can search by resource, and we've given you all of the Ontario courses so we've combed all of the curriculum for across the country and looked for specific expectations that our resources work with or meet. So you can see here the range that we've found. Yeah, challenge and change is another great one for this. Anywhere where you're really going to be doing a lot of reading about current events and students are going to be finding sources for their work is a really, really good one. So in this case, we also, interestingly enough, found a lot of links in computer sciences and technology. So that's a really interesting one. So we can show you where to find all of the resources on the website, including the elementary ones. So if you go to Classroom, here are all of the resources. So specifically for elementary, the election simulation toolkit is a great one.
Yeah, so that's really designed for sort of grades 4 and up. And if you have littles, like if you're in kindergarten to grade 4, we suggest choosing our mascot, which has Arctic animals, and it comes with these beautiful posters. Let me see if I can find the posters. So you have all these different animals, and you get a kit with a ballot box and those kinds of things, and each candidate has their own song and speech.
Yep.
And this one, both of our elementary resources are going to be renewed in the spring. So I mean, feel free to order them now, and check back with us later in the spring. We're renewing them to incorporate sort of more up-to-date pedagogy.
Yep. So they will definitely be available and really helpful.
Okay.
Great. So
yeah. So that's kind of what we just did from
Yeah.
this slide.
Yeah, but you can see that there is a breadth. So the bottom two center ones are great in geography, for example.
Yes.
So they're designed for geography curriculum. The middle one on the top, Voting Rights Through Time, is great for history classes, grade 10 history or grade 12 Canadian history, challenge and change, a lot of those kinds of courses. So that's looking at how inclusive our democracy is. And the one on the far right on the top, Which Election, is a resource that we created along with all of the provincial electoral management bodies across the country. So it's a co-creation with those provinces. And so it addresses levels of government and how elections work at different levels, as well as some of the rights and responsibilities of different levels of government. So there's a real breadth that you can use.
So we have a question in the chat about grade 8. So I would say for grade 8, I would recommend Voting Rights Through Time in the language learner version if you're looking at history curriculum, because we do start in 1867 and kind of go to the present. So you can kind of get a look at some of that. And I would also suggest Does Voting Matter? Because it's real fun. There's zombies and wizards, and Civic Action Then and Now also is really adaptable and flexible in terms of taking action on issues and having students examine how civic actions are successful via a couple of case studies.
And all three have language learner versions, so they should definitely be accessible for your grade 8 students.
Yep. I think Elections by the Numbers also meets some of the math curriculum expectations in grade 8 too, in terms of representing data. So.
Yep. So the Elections by the Numbers is a numeracy piece that.
And if you're looking to get an overview, I'm just going to go to the video page.
Good. Yes.
So we've made these teacher support videos that give you sort of a 5-minute overview, so you don't have to listen to us gab for an hour. You can mostly just listen to me talk for 5 minutes and kind of show you how all the materials work in real life.
So these were filmed a year ago, more than a year ago. So they only address the in-classroom, but it still gives you a really good sense of how it's really meant to function. So what is up-to-date pedagogy?
Oh, in Election Simulation Toolkit. And choosing our mascot, we're mostly we did a little bit less of a refresh, but with Election Simulation Toolkit, we're going to have these roll cards that students are going to get. So everybody's going to participate in a simulated classroom election on a topic of your choice. So right now, the kit that's Election Simulation Toolkit is like, you get the ballot box and the voting screen and some suggestions for how you could run it. But this one is really focused and tight, so that you could do it in an hour and a half, maybe if you're in you have language learners or you're in an elementary setting. But yeah, roll cards and like handouts for each group, and everybody's got sort of a different structured role that they're playing. So like candidates and election officers and speech writers and researchers and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a lot more ready to go, and I mean, still flexible if you want to just use it how you want to use it, but just providing some more structured scaffolds for students and teachers.
Yep. So there's a speech scaffold. We provide you with sample ballots so that you can have more than 4 candidates. In the old version, you could only have 4 candidates. So, a few little tweaks like that, but mainly it's a streamlining of it and the focusing on the roll cards and how we participate in elections in a variety of ways. It's not just about voting, but there are lots of ways to participate in an election.
Yeah. So and we had a lot of fun piloting that resource last spring. When was it last? I don't even remember when. And we were in real classrooms, so it was not last spring. But yeah, like getting feedback from students and watching, what kinds of issues they choose to talk about in their school or community and what's important to them. So that's a really neat. It's going to be a great activity, and it should be ready this spring. It's just in the final sort of production and printing stage at this point, and I am going to be writing a blog post about the up-to-date pedagogy. So check back, and we'll share that.
Yep, absolutely. There was one other thing that I was going to say that has slipped my mind.
The virtual PD session?
Yes, that's what it was. Thank you very much. So we were running a pilot project in the Greater Toronto area and in Manitoba, where we were offering teacher support. We've kind of shifted to provide a national response to professional development for teachers. So we now offer customized PD sessions for groups of teachers across the country. So you don't have to be in the GTA anymore. So if you are having a heads meeting or a professional development day and you want to do something within your department or something like that, we can facilitate that. And so on our page, Professional Learning, we have an online form where we, sort of try to get a preliminary sense of what it is you're looking for, and we will customize that workshop for your teacher group.
Yeah, and just to be clear, since we do have some teacher candidates and elementary teachers here with us today, our mandate at Elections Canada is to really reach those students who are 14 to 18 years old, like or 14 to 17, the future voters who are about to vote next. So we don't have a lot of capacity to provide a lot of services for just elementary teachers, but we're happy to do combinations.
Yeah, and teacher candidates, we are happy to work with secondary teacher candidates, either a group of you who are interested, or if you have a student association that likes to provide professional development for your colleagues, we're more than willing to work with you as well. Again, secondary level, maybe down to grade intermediate as well, we can support, but we don't really have the capacity for the primary and junior folks. Are you finding that more 18-year-olds are voting? Well, that's our goal. It's a little early to assess. We launched in the fall of 2018, and then we had an election in the fall of 2019, so it's a little bit hard to gauge that impact. So that's really our core mandate. Ultimately, what we want to do is to build a well-informed, confident voter in the future, right, amongst our students.
And we know that teachers are talking to future voters every day. And so we want to help support teachers with great tools and great information to help you engage future voters.
Yep, the data is pretty grim. You can see it in the elections by the numbers. Voter turnout in youth, 18 to 24-year-olds, in 2019 was about 54%. It had gone up significantly in 2011 to about 59%, but it has dropped down again. So we really want to boost that, and that's our mandate. So we're hopeful that teachers getting their hands on resources and feeling more confident about teaching about these things will also help their students become more confident in the future. So if you are looking for any and all of these things, please visit us at our special civic education website, electionsanddemocracy.ca. You can follow us on Twitter at democracyca, or follow us on Facebook at Elections and Democracy. We'd love to hear, particularly on social media, if you use any of these with your class. We'd love you to share photos or anything that you have with us and tag us so that we can see it. The other thing is all of our, I don't know if I said this, all of our resources are available in English and French, both official languages. So we've talked about the language learner versions in English. On the French side, we have simplified language versions for French immersion students. And in this resource in particular, most of our resources, they're just, translations. In this resource, what's really great is that the case studies are not simply a translation. We've actually selected examples from Francophone media. Okay, so that's really important because often students don't really know what are trusted sources anyway, but they're probably really not familiar, particularly if they're in immersion, with Francophone media and what are good, reliable sources on that side of things. So they're not just a simple translation, they are completely different in round 2 with the real world examples. So that's a really great thing for teachers on the French side. Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask?
Yeah, that's great. Great questions. Thanks.
So someone says that they like one new idea. I can use scenarios as they are really engaging and generate spontaneous discussion. Yes. Someone says, I did misinformation and disinformation in January. Wish I had this sooner. I did it in a similar way that you did. Someone likes giving students scenarios that they have to figure out, and the teacher acts as a facilitator. So that's the kind of inquiry base of all of our resources, is rather than sort of, telling students we want them to work with the materials and, construct that learning.
Yep. I think we're at the end of our time, Zoe.
We are, but just really quickly, if you are in the GTA and you want to reach out to me, by all means, if you're not and you have any questions, you can email me or check out our inbox at our website. You can info any questions there. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for coming.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back in. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, thank you so much, Zoe and Rachel, for this really fantastic presentation. We really learned a lot. It was very thorough. We went over everything. We learned a lot about all the different resources that you are providing the teachers with. And we also learned about kangaroos and hippopotamus. And I really liked the remark that you made about the fact that young adults are, or teenagers are more skeptical. And I think it's a very healthy attitude, because we come from a time where when we would see a picture, we would assume that a photograph was a proof that was uncontestable, And in the 1980s, late 1980s, because I studied photography, that's my background, we started working with Photoshop at the end of the 1980s, and suddenly everything changed. And now you cannot trust anything anymore. Well, at least you cannot trust photographs anymore. That's
not in the same way. You have to ask questions.
Sure. So I'm just going to share my screen for a quick second again, just to remind people that tomorrow they will receive all the links that have been shared today. So you don't have to worry if you didn't manage to grab all these links. You're going to receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a quick evaluation form. And then also, oh, sorry, my mistake. So that was the slide I wanted to show you first, that you will receive a link and a quick evaluation form tomorrow. And also I want to remind everybody that we have, this was session number 2, and we have one more coming up next week. Wednesday, February 17, and Zoe and Rachel will be back with us again for a presentation called Elections by the Numbers. And so I really hope that you all enjoyed today's presentation. I want to thank you all for your participation and your collaboration. It was really engaging. And I hope to see you all next week on next Wednesday. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you next Wednesday.
Great. Thanks so much,
Thanks
Michelle.
again, Zoe, and
Thanks
thanks again,
everybody for
Rachel.
being
Thank
here.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.